An unspoken truth is that media outlets and YouTubers will review a product favorably that was handed to them for free. Early access or review copies are generally provided by the company to generate interest. The reviewer will normally speak primarily on good topics without hashing too far into bad topics that could spur sales. This is done to cement their position to companies as someone you could trust, as well as preventing them from being silently blacklisted by the initial company and any other that may not want to take that risk. That isn't to say that all reviewers do so, but it is quite common. With that said, an issue that will unfortunately never go away is the audience perception of the wow factor. The wow factor comes from seeing snippets or bite-sized showcases of a product and automatically be 100% on board, no questions asked. And for those who do ask questions, they cast to the fire. For how dare you, inane of mind, dislike and show criticism through valid points of something that I enjoy. This is precisely why, and I say this as harshly as I possibly can, games like the day before and ill can get away with all the shady practices they indulge. People take surface level information that they receive and carry it to their grave. Red flags aren't hidden, you just need to take off the rose-tinted glasses sometimes. People who disagree with you or don't like something you don't like is not a personal attack, and if there are people who act like you in the world, then there are most certainly people who don't, and we all don't gotta mesh. Not everything is made for everybody. So what's with the preface, you ask? Well, for one, it fits in the title, and two, because I've always wanted the direction of my channel to go into more of an objective and critical look at things that I enjoy. And to be objective and critical, I have to make suggestions, offer solutions, ask questions, do some research, insert personal experience, yada, yada, yada. So sometimes it may be wrong. Someone may disagree with me or what I say. Maybe someone won't care, but I know for a fact that there's still an audience out there that have these same thoughts or others that I could potentially reach and learn from. Most of us don't want to just see big YouTubers scream over X thing happening in game. Looks like fun. Some of us want to be like, but is the scream actually worth it? Is it fun? Or is it just the YouTuber being the YouTuber? This review isn't for me to tell you whether you should or should not buy the game. It's to better inform you with information that I haven't exactly seen be talked about, and if that makes me someone people hate, then oh well. For each topic I discuss, I'm going to have chapters down below. You can just skip through them. Whatever you want to find, you can look for. Since Wild Hearts was first announced, I didn't put too much stake into the game, not because I'm a Monster Hunter loyalist, but because it was tied to EA. Plenty of us had that initial, oh no moment. I held my breath, and I waited for more news. News which would literally trickle off of Jack's beanstalk, as the information surrounding the game came so far and few between. One of my greatest issues with how this game was released, in fact, was the lack of information and marketing. I spoke briefly about this in my other videos concerning the topic. If you want to hear those, link in the description. Now, one day we get a trailer, and the next thing you know, time passes and a ton of YouTubers are just playing a quasi-demo of the game out of nowhere. Of course, they're restricted as to what they can say and show, obviously. I watched Eric's video first and then a few other YouTubers, and I was still just as confused about everything going on because, you see, I'm not a simple man. Flashy lights and pretty swing-schwangs don't dilate my pupils nor pucker my lips to let out a resounding ooh. I constantly scoped out the website to see if there was anything on the game mechanics. Nothing but Kemono. 2 weeks before the game is set to release, and weapons were being relegated to just text boxes. I participated in the AMA, didn't get my question answered, that's fine. 2 were answered by virtue of someone else. Fancy CG trailers and promises of a trial instead of a demo, but only if you subscribe to EA Play. Speaking of, now that all that's over, I need to cancel that before I get fisted with another subscription-based payment on my already decrepit debit. And for those who only got EA Play for this game, that's your reminder. You're welcome. As for this EA Play situation, it was actually quite infuriating. You see, the game costs $70, and in order to play it a little early, you need to subscribe to a service in order to do so. If you bought the game while subscribed, you got a discount on the game itself, which still somehow ended up being around the same price tag as if you just bought it normally, but surely no one noticed it, So we'll just sweep that under the rug. Now here's where it actually gets whack. Content creators and review publishing sites are always going to get a copy or a code early. As I mentioned above, this is expected That means anyone wanting to play has to satiate themselves off of secondhand gaming. Small YouTubers have a crack and grind their lives away to get something meaningful out of a relatively good time as to keep up with the current level of interest and compete against the guy who was able to play the game 7 years before release. And we haven't even gotten to the actual whack part yet. So the actual whack part is EA Play subscriptions are broken into two forms: EA Play and EA Play Pro. Truly fascinating, I know. But what isn't fascinating is the fact that EA Play Pro is only eligible for players on PC, which means PlayStation and Xbox have to settle for a regular subscription. Guess what they announced? If you have EA Play Pro, you can play the game 3 days before official launch. You fucking what? So people who don't or can't get the game on PC for whatever circumstances just gotta wait now? What about the people who could play on whatever but decided to pre-order on one console like this furious feline here? That one's on me. I'm adamant about playing certain games on certain things. I will only play Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. I do not care. But for other people, it may not be the same. I made my bed. Now I'm going to practice a couple positions with the consequences. While I feel that this was handled poorly, at least God's sense of humor was also fair. PC players were reporting issues with their visuals. I'm not a graphics person, so I'm the worst person to ask about this topic. This game looks fine and it performs extremely well on my PS5. So far, I've had 2 issues. Shadow rendering issues when I'm up high, and I really couldn't care about that. And if I hunted certain Kemono in the summer map, the audio would be delayed and certain sounds wouldn't play. And no matter what happens, it's just those sounds. While it doesn't bother me much for personal reasons, graphics and performance means everything to most people. Players were reporting issues with their graphics, frame rate, responsiveness, crashes, etc. While that was primarily on PC, it did happen to some console players as well. I don't know what to make of that. Either their PCs aren't strong enough, or maybe something's in the settings was off, or the game isn't properly optimized. I'm not sure. I know that they said that they were going to have a patch released for Tuesday the 21st. But I'm sure there are other sources you could ask other than me, but that's something to look out for. I do understand when visuals begin to act up that it can be detrimental to the experience. You were robbed, and your story will not be forgotten. Alright, empathy is over. We're on to the game's actual story. Honest to God, hunting games normally aren't rated on their narrative. Monster Hunter is always about a nameless hunter that arrives to help a particular location or group with their issue that ranges from biological anomalies or activity displayed by the monsters that you need to find the root of and then snip it, only to find out that that very root had a whole ass tree attached to it. Tokiden is almost a political drama, but has demon invasions that eat time, and you have a slayer, and you have to minimize that invasion so you can have temporary peace before it starts all over again. While God Eater... Titty. Wild Hearts is about these incredible nature-infused monsters, and it's up to you, the nameless hunter, to put a stop to it by finding out why they're roaming outside of their usual habitat. Now, I guess what the final monster was going to be by analyzing the themes of the game, it was somehow right and wrong, but that's spoiler territory, and unlike the Kemono, I'm not going to wander there. Nothing outside of the formula, however, one little design to this narrative horrifically holds the tempo back. You see, during cutscenes, or just regular conversation, the characters will address the player and cause a dialogue prompt to appear. This does absolutely nothing but eke out different voice lines. The only time this matters are the literally less than a handful of moments when they'll ask if you want to head back to town or stay and do your own thing. Thank God for those, because I'm a side-questing whore and I'm proud of it. This promotes 2 things to the player who isn't starry-eyed. 1, this is a huge waste of time, and whether or not I mash A because I want to get back to slapping that fruit rat. 2, it offers the illusion of control. You can be an asshole or you can be a good Samaritan in your responses, but what is readily apparent is that no matter what you choose, you're still going to complete the task, and the characters will all still like you and your godlike charisma. I mean, that's like a charisma with 2 Z's. It's just needless fluff that took away time and resources from other mechanics that I feel could and should have been improved. I will give them credit where credit is due. I love the backstory of some of these characters. Aside from the main quest, you get side quests too. For nobodies, it's just a simple do and move on your merry way. For main characters, you get a little bit of narrative revolving around the character, their backstory, what events led them to where they are, and just how they are as a person. My favorite characters are Nobumitsu and Kagyaku. I really hope I said that right, but I feel like I butchered the crap out of those. There are other characters, but I'm not going to spoil them. However, I got to get something off my chest. If you don't want spoilers, I'm going to make it its own separate chapter. Skip to this one in the next 10, 9, 8, 0. Okay, so at the top of the fucking town sits a little house with the princess of the Ago clan and her advisor, per se. She loves the town and involves herself regularly to try and be a good leader, even though she herself knows she has very little to offer. She was basically placed in that position to die. When receiving her requests and listening to her dialogue, I found myself getting invested in her story. In my headcanon, my boy Nobumitsu gets an all-expense-paid vacation to Kogyaku's special clan recipe, and together they adopt the princess to show her what real parents are like, regardless of blood. But that was snatched away from me because this beacon of hope and love in the town just silently went missing and no one knew. Turns out, sometime during the attack on Minato by Amaterasu, a random citizen decided it'd be a good idea to get a kimono to come and fight the Amaterasu in the town. Meanwhile, the princess is standing by the gates and sees this and doing her usual protection of the town duties, by the way, this all happens off screen, distracts the kimono so that the rest can get away. Now, they kept saying like, oh, she's dead. We can't tell her family. Oh no, her sister knows and wants a memento of her sister to remember her, so go hunt the monster that killed her. And I'm like, yeah, right, bro. We're gonna hunt the monster, and the next thing you know, she's gonna come out from hiding and we're all gonna live happily ever after. Psych! She's fucking dead, bro! What do you mean? That's impossible! It hurt. It hurt so much. Gone before even being able to have a fully realized story and the love of her people. Fucking tragic, bro. So anyway, moving on. Side quests are interesting if you like learning about characters. Since I was making this video, I figured I had no choice but to resist the A mash through the dialogue. It's a nice touch for people who like to invest themselves in characters that the story doesn't necessarily emphasize on, outside of the blacksmith chick and the crippled samurai. The options provided here are your standard vibration or gnaw, damage on screen, notification settings, camera settings, visuals, language, you name it. They even have an entire tab dedicated to accessibility. My number one problem with this accessibility tab is that the only accessibility parts of the entire tab are the screen reader and the colorblind settings. The other settings that populate the tab are options ripped from the other tabs. If you alter the slider here, it just affects the same option. A strange choice, but I mean, hey, I don't make the rules. Another instance that distresses me beyond my recognition is that the HUD and your ability to customize it. I air quote there for a reason. It just asks you whether you want certain things on, the chat and the notification duration, and the transparency of the entire HUD. When Wildheart's YouTube channel uploaded the video for Golden's Tempest gameplay, I was immediately unsettled. Why the fuck is the stamina bar right next to my character in that size and that color? When they did the Reddit AMA, I asked the question about whether we're able to move HUD aspects or not. My question wasn't answered, but I had to wait and see. Well, I waited, I saw, I hated. Let me tell you why it bothers me so much. Traditional games have information that you need to know on the HUD that isn't too distracting from what you're supposed to be focusing on, while also allowing the information to be read at all times. That's not the case in this game. I can't just adjust the size of anything on my HUD just whether or not it's there or not. There have been instances where visual effects are having a literal bukkake on the screen, and there's so much information to absorb visually, and I need to pay attention to not one, but 4 gauges at a time. My status, whether I'm about to get exalted by holy fire, my Karakuri amount, my weapon gauge, and my stamina, which mind you is something that they really wanted to focus on when making this game. Managing your stamina. The only time I have a reasonable time viewing my stamina is when I'm hunting something at night. The orange bar being right next to your character can blend in painfully well when sunlight patches strike or there's an event horizon happening on the screen. A personal issue for me, maybe, but I suffer from the inability to focus properly because I can see what I'm looking at directly, but everything around me where I'm looking is cut off. My peripheral only works when something is moving. So when I'm visually receiving information, it can be a lot for me at times, and to couple that in, if there's excess noise like music, people talking, or white noise, it can make me nauseous and irritable. Remember earlier when I stated that I don't mind the audio cutout? Yeah, that's because when I'm gaming, I have the volume extremely low while I listen to ambiance or non-energized YouTube videos to somewhat stabilize that. I've been killed many times with the Nodachi and the Claw Blade because the monster is just spamming attacks relentlessly and I'm dodging for my life only to realize I can't dodge. And I can't see why I can't dodge, but I know why, but I also know that it's over for me. Breath of the Wild has a similar stamina wheel where it only appears when stamina is used, but the key difference is the size, the color, and the agency of the display. It's a good enough size that even when it has multiple layers, you can still see the final ring clear as day. The color, although green, does not clash with other colors like grass, and the overlay it uses pops out it's just as much as possible. For such a crucial aspect of the game, it really took me out of it at plenty of times. There are menus in this game that worked fine. The weapon tree, the Kogaku shop, the bathhouse, the fisherman request board, the equipment screen and the information tab, the encyclopedia, the map. The compass compared to a mini map sucks bat butter. There are so many times where I had to open up my map multiple times because the guide telling me where the Kemono was or what my indicator was at would take me on this round trip. And I had issues finding out the difference between up and down, and I had to constantly spam L2 just so it could stop disappearing, just like Dead Space. So yeah, I don't know. Most of the UI stuff that needs to be fixed would just reduce visual clutter because honestly, I don't necessarily have an issue with the weapon forging screen or the Karakuri upgrading path, but I know some people might. And while it is, to me, it's a unique design, I think that it could have been like spaced out a little bit better because to me, everything's just kind of like clumped together a little bit. But again, I don't have a problem with it. This last section is purely about gameplay, and that involves weapons, Kemono, Karakuri, and mechanics. To start, it's innovative that you can create camps anywhere you want for fast travel points by spending crystals to increase dragon pits so you can gain resources to put down those dragon Karakuri. That sounds like a lot, right? It's like micromanaging a house simulator on top of my hunting mechanics. They have certain places where the materials to make a tent are a lot lower, but that doesn't mitigate the materials it spends on other faculties. It's rather difficult to get good places on every map unless you get to the end game where you are finally able to unlock more than just level 3. You can also put down Dragon Karakuri to help you out by way of food creation, resource gathering, cosmetics, etc. The problem with these is that for the cost, they yield so little for taking so long, you have to upgrade them in the tree to be able to improve on those. But they don't just follow you to every camp and location. You just have to return to that specific location to get that stuff going. So what I ended up doing was relegating my food resources to Minato and just treated that like my Monster Hunter games where I can get all my food before going off on a quest right there. The ores and the animal-specific items to get were just put on the map because why not? Gotta be smart about the whole resource thing. As for the battle ones, I've had more impact in my hunts just by using the barriers and bombs rather than the other stuff, truthfully. It's not that the other ones are useless, it's just that I don't have a use for them particularly. Like the elemental lantern, the healing mist, the stake. I guess what I'm saying is like, while it's a feature of the game and like a main selling point, I don't really find it crucial unless I'm trying to cancel an animation and force the camera to reposition. Out of my own attacks, by the way. Maybe others do, and that's more on them because not everybody works the same. I know that people don't operate like I do. I know there's somebody out there who might need the elemental lantern, the healing mist, the stake, but I personally just don't. It just never added any like depth or variety for me. Oh, and also in order to unlock different ones, you have to go fight a specific monster and you have to have a specific thing on so that when you see the monster, you get a flash of inspiration so that you can unlock it, which is weird. The maps are huge, and unlike Forspoken, life and resources can be found almost everywhere. But if you open up the map to look for specific things, it only shows you large and small Kemono. Creatures that you may need to capture in order to get certain materials or food options are highlighted on the map, but don't tell you what they are specifically, so I hope you have good memory. There's also no marker for ores, so you gotta run out there and figure it out. Watch out between chapters because certain areas will be ravaged environmentally, so you could end up losing a potential path depending on which chapter you are in. The weapons are one of the best aspects about this game because you can tell there was a lot of love put into them. The only one that I didn't willingly play was the cannon, since that one mission was enough for me to get the gist of it. They look flashy, but that doesn't compare to some of the issues felt. There's a lack of control when you're trying to attack and steer. You can just turn in the direction you want without being forced to do a lunging attack that takes you probably much further than you would like to go or swinging much wider than you would like to hit, so you miss the already small hit zones. Some attacks don't let you cancel out of them and into other moves or evade, so you either have to jump or open up your Karakuri menu to get your movement options back. It doesn't feel good knowing that because certain liberties afforded by movement are taken away, especially when the Kemono attacks are so frequent and have such far reach. I applaud them for making such unique playstyles with their weapons, but I was really hoping that the combat would have felt a lot better. It's like a tie between being Monster Hunter Generation 1, where you can't turn while you're attacking, and also being Luigi, where certain attacks will just make you fly and slide across the ground. I can tell you, out of the 15 unique kimono they have, I have 3 that I enjoyed fighting, 4 I would never want to see again, and the rest are just meh. In order of my favorites, Ember Plume, Fume Beak, and Lava Back. I never in my life ever want to see Golden Tempest, Grithog, Onyx Shard, and the final boss. They take the worst aspects of the game and crank them to 25. Can't grab onto them, their entire body is a hitbox, because why not? They suffer from artificial difficulty by way of just dealing a lot of damage. And for the final boss, again, it is the spectacle and the size, but that also plays in the anti-fun bit of it. I mean, Lord, I literally lost my mind fighting Golden Tempest. If villains could survive their third act breakdown, they would come out of the storm and into the peaceful valley and win like I did against the Golden Tempest. The rest of the monsters are just whatever. I'm sure other people had fun with different kimono, but I just didn't have a good experience enough to say that the whole roster is good enough for me. In combat, they suffer from some very strange circumstances. For one, they're relentless. They don't stop moving unless you bust their chops, so they can stay down for like 4 seconds. A core mechanic in this game is to grab onto the kimono, crawling on their body to find a little exposed spot, and using your hunter arm to extract more Karakuri, get healing water, and activate some skills. But it's extremely difficult, as if you grab onto them and it's moving, you could slip and slide and be dispositioned and fall rather than just holding on. It takes stamina to cling on, jump, all that. Not saying it can't be done, it's just a chore and a half to play a minigame that may or may not reward me. No matter how fast I get to the kimono, once I do a certain amount of damage or I break apart, they will leave the area immediately. Now that wouldn't sound so bad if the kimono didn't take a 5-year journey to get to their next destination 8 time zones away, and when they're dying, triple that amount of time. So much of my time in this game was spent chasing a kimono, and there's not enough damn resources to spawn a ton of flying vines and just whip around the map until you do endgame stuff. And even then, I just find myself fast traveling to a camp to try and cut them off on their path, or going ballistic trying to stop them from moving with the Claw Blade's attachment ability. Sometimes it works. Other times I'm just chafing my ass on the ground to slide for quicker results. All in all, I'm feeling a little bit let down by the final product. I wouldn't say it was a wasted experience, but it was one that could have been made so much better. I know I didn't talk about armor or the weapon tree, but that's a topic I'm not too comfortable speaking on because I've just been wearing Ember Plume and a Fume Beak and rolling down the left side of these sets. And I haven't really played out that because I wasn't sure if this volatile kimono thing would have an effect on that or not. So hopefully this game gets its footing through some updates to fix the performance and improve upon the base game. For now, I give it a 5 out of 10, maybe a strong 6, but that could change sometime in the future. Am I going to make more content on this game? Who knows? Maybe I'll do some speedrun hunts or something eventually, seeing as the volatile kimono seem to stay in the same area you find them in until death. So until next time.